And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Beau. Beau, take it away.
Thank you. And good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I have to tell you, I'm more excited about this shortstop than any of the others for different reasons. I haven't stopped thinking about it since probably Saturday morning. And the reason I find it so fascinating is because I think last week, once I got through the horror of it, I realized that this is going to be a short socio-political expanse of my mind, but it's nonpartisan. Um, that we were seeing a huge um, intersection of how the pandemic is affecting our economy and our people, and how the social issues are affecting our people. And from my perspective, when I started thinking about it, I hadn't really experienced anything that big in 45 years. And just to put it in perspective, this is me 45 years ago. You could see, well, you can't see it's black and white. I have a nice blonde afro and an auburn beard. I was absolutely gorgeous. But here I am today, different body, same mind. So I'm thinking that this is a true opportunity for us collectively, because all the arguments last week were about behaviors. The laws changed in '68, and we got rid of the Vietnam War, and some of the behaviors changed, but not enough, or not far enough. And so here we are again, I believe, at an inflection point, and I believe we'll look back 10 years from now and see last week as critical in how we're behaving as a nation, and it's about behaviors. So what better time to talk about behaviors than now? So let me start with that and go to insight number 6, integrating conscious behavior changes. So from my perspective, everything is intertwined in how we look at change. Our culture and our operating systems, our culture and the transformation we're attempting to go through, and the behaviors we have and the culture, it's all tied together. And when we look just briefly at behaviors, it's basically about what we do or don't do, how we do or don't do the things that we do or don't do, and how we interpret and respond to stimuli. And this is key for you, because believe it or not, I've been attempting to stimulate you for 5 weeks. So let's talk about it. We've had 5 weeks of behavioral nudges. First week, being deliberate about investigating problems. That's a behavior change. Second week, framing your opportunities as a capacity bucket, which is changing the way we approach someone, which is a change of behavior. Third week, stopping unnecessary work. Fourth week, engaging others in socialization. And fifth week, leveraging critical thinking among teams and between teams. These are all behavior changes, and I've been asking them of you. So as you start thinking about this stuff, and nowhere in there, for 6 short stops, I never talked about anything from a lean geek perspective, except for the capacity bucket, because I'm that kind of geek. It's always been about the behavior changes and the behaviors we have as we attempt to make technical changes, and they all go together. So that's the nudge I've been giving to you. And what I'd like to suggest is that there are other ways to think about behavior changes too, and I have 2 more examples for you. One is team behavior expectations. Just a second, let me get rid of the pictures here. There we go. So I was at a collaborative learning opportunity with another insurance company, not the first one, but this is the second one, a couple of years ago. And we had 3 teams from 3 different functional areas of the company. So that was the cohort, 3 teams, different functions. They were not behaving well. When they got together in the cohort, they decided, hey, I'm not really interested in these other guys and what they have to say, because that's not my work. So I'm bored. And I saw this going down the toilet. So I decided to create behavior expectations for the team. These are the ones I chose for my team, not to suggest they're the ones you should choose for your team. This was my context. First, sharing, listening, and learning from each other. Second, stealing shamelessly. Third, engaging who you work with in your experiments. It's not just you, it's everybody. Next, leading all aspects of your experiments. You run the experiments, and therefore only using internal staff as coaches. And ultimately, demonstrating scientific thinking. That was my expectation, that they demonstrate scientific thinking. This is key to me. So it's very easy to put this on a PowerPoint slide and say, this is what I want out of you, blah, 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 blah. But how are you going to measure it? So we set up a visual management board, and this is it. This is the actual board. It's really crappy quality on the picture, and it's the only one I have, but I wanted to keep it in its original state just to show you that, hey, it was pretty informal. So in this, we have the expected behaviors, the same as I had on the last slide. The next column are examples. It was over 2 week, every 2 weeks we checked. So this is a 2-week summary of the good examples associated with that behavior. Then we had some not so good examples associated with that behavior. And then we had coaching actions or countermeasures as a result of what we saw. So this was the board that the CI people and I sat around and talked about when we talked about expectations of behaviors and how they're doing on behaviors. And oh, by the way, the teams got the message. They started with these behavior changes that I asked for. They actually started sharing like crazy, and it turned out great. So that's a great tale. And all we did is put the examples on Post-it notes. If you can't see from there, it's just a whiteboard and Post-it notes. So that is team level. I also want to give an example for corporate level, because there's all sorts of different kinds of behaviors there. So let's go to the Shingo model. And for those of you who don't know too much about the Shingo model, about 15 years ago, people in the lean community, not Six Sigma, this is just lean, decided that they were getting a little anxious because we were spending too much time on tools and things weren't really taking off. So there was a lot of focus on coaching and doing different things and behaviors. And we all had different ideas, and one entity took it upon themselves to wrap those ideas into a model that's the Shingo Institute. And they took lots of stuff everybody was working on and created this really cool model. And my hat's off to them. They did a great job. You can download the model if you're interested. If you're not, that's okay too. But this is what I want to share from it. There are basically what they call 4 dimensions, and each color is a different dimension. These are behaviors. So it's behaviors wrapped around results. It's behaviors wrapped around enterprise alignment. It's behaviors wrapped around continuous improvement, not the tools, but the behaviors. And the behaviors wrapped around cultural enablers. So they teach this model and they give out prizes and stuff like that. They're pretty cool. Now, that's way too much for anyone to pick up at once. Nobody, no organization can change all those behaviors at once. You might as well shut down. So I have an example of one company that picked up just one of those dimensions, the one on the bottom, cultural enablers, and the subsets are leading with humility and respect every individual. And here is that example. So we'll start way over on the left. The blue bar, the blue bar is employee satisfaction, but here's the story. In 2003, which is the bar on the left, they had an employee turnover of nearly 40%. This was a temporary staffing agency. It's a very competitive industry, the temporary staffing agency. And so they were concerned. They were losing good people, so they brought in someone to do an employee satisfaction survey. The people came back and say, hey, you got a 71% score on your employee satisfaction. That's pretty good. And the leaders looked at them and said, it might be good, but it's not good enough to stem a 40% turnover. We have to do something different. So they picked up the cultural enablers. They decided that everything they would do would be focused around leading with humility and respecting every individual. And the cool thing about this, the leader of that program, the person who created the program and designed it, was a master black belt. And she had to put away her toolkit for 13 years because this was about behaviors. So they started on a quest, and you can see the trends on the blue bars. By 2016, they've had 6 years of 90% or above in employee satisfaction. There. The employee turnover went down to 17%. The industry average is 40%. They went down to 17. And voila, the last number is bucks. The hockey stick effect was the impact of just saying, if we take care of the employees will take care of the business. So this is an extraordinary example. I actually saw this presented at a Shingo conference in 2016 in Salt Lake City. I was blown away by it. And it really was another inflection on my thinking in terms of how important behaviors are and how to wrap behaviors into what we do. And oh, by the way, I saw this before I put the team expectations on the table from the last slide. So closing out insight number 1, or insight number 6. I actually have a lot to say here. But what I really want to say is in context of last week and behaviors, the behaviors, the cultures, the systems, the transformations, they're all tied together. And we're at a moment now where we can freely talk about behaviors because it's in the news. And we can freely talk about behaviors because we have to change our behaviors to work from home. Now we have to change our behaviors when we go back to work. So this is a perfect time to put behaviors on the table, and this is where there's energy that you can use in your favor. Because there might be something in here that you can put on the table and wrap into the fact that, hey, there's lots of behavior changes. How should we think about this and make it better? And that's really what I have a formal slide on it, but that's really what I'm thinking. So I think with that, I'd like to stop my insight and go on to assignments. I have to take a little bit longer here because I have 3 assignments to choose from. You have options. First of all, the first option is evaluating your transformation behaviors. So if you're familiar with force fields, you can do one on behaviors to compile what you see in helpful and not so helpful behaviors. And I'll show you one in just a second. And then once you do that, highlight the ones that the leaders demonstrate. That'd be kind of interesting, both the plus and the minus. Here's an example of a behavior force field. You can make your own. But in doing so, you could Google on how to do this if you haven't seen it before. You basically put down thoughts of behaviors that you've observed on the left side that are helpful and on the right side that are not so helpful. Then you sit back and look at it and scratch your head saying, what are we seeing and what should we be doing about it? So that's the first option. Whoops, and I'm sorry, it's one thought as you go through. One thought per post-it note. Second option, a pandemic behavior reflection. This is about behaviors. During the pandemic, what did you keep? What behaviors did you add? What behaviors were left behind? And then post-pandemic, looking forward, what needs to come back that we left behind? What needs to stay? What needs to be added? Maybe. What do we need to leave behind that we still have? So it's actually a good time to think about this because of the behaviors are in the air. Last option, team behavior expectations. I thought this was pretty cool when we were doing it. Maybe you think it's cool too and want to set up some expectations. So for your teams, create behaviors that your teams need to demonstrate in order to be super successful. And oh, by the way, socialize these with the team. Don't spring it on them. And then set up your visual measuring board for these behaviors. It could be like mine or different. I'll see what you come up with. And I'll give you extra credit if you do the same for you. In other words, what are your behaviors that you need to demonstrate as you lead these teams? So those are my assignments, the Friday office hours. We're going to have some interactive discussions. I hope you're going to bring something you can share because there could be some really cool things you just sketch out that you can share and we can network about. And I think we're going to have a special feature to wrap everything up, all the 6, but Eric and I will talk about that independently. But I do want to introduce insight number 7 and beyond. It's your turn to have some insights. So you get to apply some short stops. And one of these days, I'm going to show up in San Luis Obispo, and we're going to go to a bar, and you're going to tell me in 10 minutes or less what you've done with all your short stops, because it's your turn to take the stage. Eric, back to you. You're on mute.
Wouldn't be a Zoom meeting without that. Beau, thank you very much. Excellent wrap up to this short stop today, and also an excellent wrap up to the series.